Okay, today we are working on chapter 5. If you look in here, you can see our chapter 5, all our learning goals. You can see all of your homework that you'll be getting. You can see how we will work through this chapter day by day. Remember, that's always at the top with our chapter 5 learning goal. You can see exactly how we're going to get through this chapter. Okay? So, we're going to work on today's chapter 5.1. And today's lesson is write linear equations in slope-intercept form. So, this is something we had to nail. We should remember, when I do slope is as shown as m, and it is our rise over our run. The other important thing is when we find slope between two coordinate points, we do that by finding the change of y over our difference in x. So we do y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. Now in a couple of my classes, what I've been noticing, 5.1, is that people are struggling a little bit. They keep mixing up what our coordinates are. Remember, on coordinates, x is always listed first. So, when I look at these two coordinates, find the slope, I know this is x, and that is y. And because it's my first one listed, that's my x1 and my y1. This is my x2, and that is my y2. So I will just have to put these in for the equation. And we should be able to solve. So y2 is 0 minus y1 is a negative 1. x2 was 4 minus x1 is a 2. 0 minus a negative. Anything minusing a negative is like adding our positive. So I'd have 1 over 4 minus 2 is 2. Our slope is 1/2. Okay, you go ahead and do the second one real quick. I'm going to do it. Go ahead, work on this, and then check with your neighbor, did you get the same slope as they did? Ethan, let's make sure we're on math and not play the game, huh? Have your planner out. I'll come around in a little bit. Okay. What did you get the slope for number 2? Bryce. Oh, other people, your voice should be off because we're now back onto this. What is it, Bryce? 4. Let's see. This is my x, this is my y. x2, y2. So, 5 minus negative 3 over 1 minus negative 1. 5 minus negative 3 is 5 plus 3 is 8. 1 minus a negative is 1 plus 1 is 2. Our slope should have been 4. Good job, guys. Okay. On number 3, a landscape architect charges $75 for a construction fee and $30 per hour. Write an equation that shows the cost C as a function of time T in hours. Okay. So the way we're going to do this is first we have to break this up and we are going to see what happens here. This first one, $75 per fee, that is a one-time fee. So when we get that equation, they don't charge that to us every single time. They're going to charge that to us one time. And then anytime we hear a number per, that's usually the one that's going to match up with our slope. It's our rate. So really what I'm writing out here is I'm writing out in our slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. And when I look at this one, I'm going to go ahead and see my $75 fee was a one-time fee. So I'm going to put that over here. It was added on. When I get my bill, they're going to charge me per my hour and then an extra $75 no matter what. The $30 per hour, that is going to be matching up with our slope. It's kind of like when we did direct variation. For every hour, we get charged 30. So our m, our slope, is usually what this is going to be when they give us a rate of charge or a rate of change or something. So we now have 30x, or you could have used h for hours, and they asked us a function of time, so t equals. Oops, I don't know why I said t. I know I said time, but I should have used t then. I didn't read that part. I got a little ahead of myself. So 30t, and we'd say c equals. Jordan, go down, please. So then we have the equation C, our total cost, what we are charged, is $30 times T, T represented however many hours we use, plus they give us $75. Is there anything else I do with this? This is what we are going to graph. This would be our graph, and it would show us how our cost goes up as time goes on. Okay, today our goal is I will use the slope and y-intercept or 2 points to write an equation of a line. We're going to talk about a foldable, and I'm not giving you the foldable yet. We are going to set up our chapter 5 in our Starter notebook later. Just today, I think we have too much going on to do that. So, because I gave you the other two reviews, or reflection and goal to do. So, following along. The steps to write an equation slope-intercept form is actually very, very easy. The first thing it says is steps to graph. Why is this not working? Okay. Steps to graph. When I look at this equation, the first thing I must always do, I had to make sure I wasn't on Ethan together for some reason. First thing I want to do is I'm going to look at my equation and say, is it in slope-intercept form right now? Y equals 2x minus 3. Is that in slope-intercept form?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Remember, we never want to forget that slope-intercept form is this, and y has to be by itself. Here. So, my first question for you is, I have to identify 2 points. The slope and my y-intercept. What is my slope on the equation y equals 2x minus 3? Joshua? 2. Remember, the coefficient that goes in front of our x is always our slope. So, my slope is 2. If it helps you, you can write it as a fraction. You just put that whole number all over 1. What is my y-intercept? It's our -3. Now, if anyone's confused where they got those, remember, in our equation, the coefficient in front of our x is our slope, and our b is our y-intercept. Okay. Now to graph, we first start with our y-intercept, because to make a graph, we really need 2 points. I like having 3, so I'm always going to try and do 3. But we only need 2 points. The first point is given to us, our y-intercept. This is our y-axis. Y-intercept means where does it cross the y-axis? And it says it happens at -3. So I go on my y-axis, and I'm going to go down 3. 1, 2, 3. That point right there is where my line will cross the y-axis. I know it because it said the y-intercept, the line crosses at -3. Get in the habit of marking what your coordinate points are. This is 0, -3. So I have one of my points.
Okay.
Now, how do I find my second point? Briggs? Yeah, I'm not gonna put in M's. 2, 1 is not a coordinate. Make sure we understand that, because that's one of the mistakes I saw last chapter with you guys. You were saying 2, 1, and so you were going over 2 and up 1 and trying to use that as coordinate. Slope is not a coordinate. Slope tells me how to get from one point on the line to any other point. It tells me the steepness of the line. And to use slope, I have to have 1 point. So I have 1 point, my y-intercept. Remember, slope is rise all over our run. So when our slope was 2, and our run is 1, I can choose any point on the line and do slope, and I'll get to the next point, guaranteed. So I'm going to go from my y-intercept. My rise is 2. 1, 2. My run was 1. 1. I'm done. That is my next coordinate point. That's all you have to do. This coordinate point is now 1, -1. I can do my slope again. I'm going to switch colors so we see it. I'm going to go up 2, 1, 2, and then I'm going to do my run over 1. That coordinate point is 2, 1. Now, remember, you could have done this with 2 points, but I'm doing it with 3. I'm going to make my line now. I got to get my mouse so I can fix it on one note. I'm on one note. There you go.
Come on. Close enough.
I know, I'm going to pick it.
Close enough. Picky.
Okay, we're pretty close there. Now, just to show you, remember, we can keep using slope. Rise 2, run 1. 1, 2, run 1. I should have been there. See, my line's off, so it bothers me. Rise 2 over 1. That is how we graph it. And to be honest, you only need 2 points. I like to do 3 just to be sure. Okay, the way we recognize slope-intercept form. Y has to be by itself on one side of the equal sign. Y equals. And when we finish, we have no parentheses on the other side. Parts of the equation. We're reviewing this. This should be pretty easy for you. M, right here is the coefficient of x. It represents slope. B is what we call the constant. It represents the y-intercept. Biggest thing is pay attention to the sign. If our equation says -5 for this part, our y-intercept is a -5. If it said +5, it's a +5. Make sure we keep those straight. So here's what we're going to kind of turn to. Now we want you to write the equation of a line that has a slope of -2 and a y-intercept of 5? Well, I'm going to go ahead and I want you to make sure you're doing notes with me. To be easiest, I'm going to write our slope-intercept equation. And then I'm going to go over here and say, what did we say my slope was? Slope was -2. Y-intercept was 5. Everything in this equation has a purpose. The y and the x, does anyone know what those are probably representing? It's kind of representing the axis. It will actually be a point on our line. If I went back to here and I put 0 and -3 in, I could put 0 in for my x and I could put -3 in for my y, and my equation would come out to be true. That's how we identify if a point is on a line. And I'll show you an example here in a second. But all we have to do is we use these two things and we're going to put them in. We will say y equals, because we don't say what y and x are yet because they change. They can be any one of our points that are on there, one of the coordinate points that match up. My slope, m, was right here. So I say -2, the x stays, and then I go ahead and say my b, my y-intercept. It was +5. That's all we have to do. That's all there is to writing in slope-intercept form. Can we graph this? Yeah. Y-intercept was 5, then our slope was -2x. Let's see if we can now go from this and write the equation. Now they gave us the line. They want us to write an equation of the line shown. Here's our line. What do you think are two things I need to find out before anything else? Aiden, what's one?
You need to find out the y-intercept.
Okay, the y-intercept. What is the y-intercept on this one, Aiden?
-5.
Huh?
-5. Oh, that one.
-2. Well, right here, it's at -2. It even tells me it's right there. Y-intercept is -2. What's the other piece of information I have to know? Joshua?
You gotta know your slope.
Okay, what is my slope on this one?
-2 over 1.
Okay, remember, to find our slope, two ways we can do it. When it's a graph, I can visually look, or I can do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I'm going to visually look. To do so, I look left and right and find a point that you know. Like, I know this point for sure. If I follow the line, do I know that point for sure?
Yeah.
Do we know what that coordinate is right there? No, so I'm going to keep going down. We know this one for sure. So now I'm going to do my rise over run. I do my rise first. 1, 2. Because I went down, that means it's a negative. Aaron, turn around. Then I do my run. 1. That identified our slope. Our slope is -2 over 1, or you can just say it's -2. Brianna?
So how do you know that you go down? Because couldn't it be exactly so?
No, that's a good question. I know I have to go down because I look left to right across here, and what's the first point I hit? Well, I hit this one before I hit that one. So that's how I know I start here. If I start here, Then I'm going to follow my line. Plus, we look, what kind of line do we have? This is a downward, which means it's a negative slope.
Nice.
So it should give you a hint that your slope has to be negative.
Undefined.
Now that we have this, I can write my equation. Y equals m. Our slope was negative 2x. My y-intercept is,
Minus 2.
there is our equation. Okay, go ahead, quickly do this one, and then we are halfway close to done. So, turn with your neighbor. I want you all to make sure you know what the slope is and what the y-intercept is. I'll pause my video. Alright, so, oh, I'm going to wait for you guys. Gentlemen, turn around, focusing. Okay, I go with the first one, that's the easiest one. What was my y-intercept? Alexander. Good. Negative 5, it's listed right there for us. Remember, x is always a 0 when you do your y-intercept. So 0, negative 5, so y-intercept is negative 5. What was our slope? Briggs?
Negative 4, 3.
Okay, I'm going to say no right away without even looking. How do I know he's wrong? Because it's not negative. How do you know it's not a negative slope? Okay, so pay attention to that. When our slope, this is a good learning thing. When our slope is going up and to the right, that means it's a positive line. When we have a positive line, our slope has to be positive. Because slope tells us how steep and in what direction. So he might have 4, 3 correct, but I know it can't be a negative. Now, just like when Brianna asked that last question last time, which was a great question, how do I know which one to go with? We look left to right. If you guys see my shadow on the board and I come across, there's this first point here. I hit it first. So I'm going to continue to work right, and I'm following my line. And I'm looking for a point I know that's even. Like that one, I don't know. That one, I don't know. This one, yeah, it's an even. I get whole numbers or I get integers that have no decimal to them. So now, I have a couple boys that are not following along. Make sure you can do this. I'm going to go ahead and do my rise. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I know my slope is a rise of 4, and then my run, 1, 2, 3. So Briggs, you had everything perfect. You did your rise, you did your run. The only problem was, did you start with this point up here? Good. So I know you're doing the process right. We just have to make sure we start with the right coordinate point. We write our equation. Y equals, you put your slope in, 4/3. We put our x, and before I say plus, our y-intercept. Okay. Now pay close attention to this one because this is one that people tend to get confused on. Write an equation for a linear function with the values f of 0 equals 5 and f of 4 equals 17. We hear that and we start getting confused and we're like, oh my gosh, f of 0? What's that even mean? What's going on? Okay. We're used to seeing... Aaron. Facing forward, next time I'm going to mark you down. We're used to seeing some of these that will say f of x. Well, we said the function of x. Well, we've learned that we can just say that is just the fancy way of saying y equals. So instead of saying f of x, we could just say y equals. So same thing here. When it's saying f of 0 equals, that's really like us just saying, oops, I got 5. That's like us just saying y equals 5. Why do we have like f of x? Because then when we go to put these in, because then that's how we, okay, because those are how we can identify different points or different lines. We have to have names for things. So, what I can do is this actually gives us 2 coordinate points. When it says f of 0 equals 5, I have my coordinates. And they go in order. It's easy to remember this, that it goes in order. Our coordinates go x, y. So my coordinate here is 0, 5. I know we want to get this confused and mixed up. I've had students even in algebra and other math classes that they want to switch these around. They want to say this is x is 5 and then this one's 0. But it's not, because pay attention to 2 things. The way we can remember x and y, so we go in order, x and y, or even if we go right down to this part, f of 0 equals 5, remember, that's the fancy way of saying y equals 5. So if I say y is 5, so y is 5, x has to be the other one. Our other coordinate that we would know is 17. 4 and 17. Now, they want us to write our equation. Aiden, you're being distracting and annoying. Now, what we need is 2 things to do our line. We need a slope and we need a y-intercept. First, I always look for my easier one. Do I know a y-intercept? How do I know my y-intercept already? Where? Good. How'd you know it was 5? Well, but how come it wouldn't be 17 then? How do you know it's on the y-axis?
Because it has no x.
Very good, Aaron. We know it has to be the y-intercept because to be on the y-axis, your x has to equal 0. This one, they happen to tell us it. If they don't, we have a way to solve it, but we're not getting to that point yet. We will get to it. I think that's tomorrow's lesson. Slope. Can we find the slope of this line?
Yes.
How do I find the slope? What am I going to use to do it?
y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1.
Good. And let's just input here. y2, this is x2, y2. x1, y1, because it came first, second. So y2 is 17 minus y1 is 5. x2 is 4 minus x1 is 0. 17 minus 5 is 12. 4 minus 0 is 4, and this would equal 12 over 4 simplifies to. So my slope is 3. We finish this off by writing our equation. Y equals, what is the slope? 3. X, what is my y-intercept?
5.
Plus 5. Okay, we have 4 minutes. I'm not going to jump on that. I'm going to let you guys get started. Our homework We are going to work on page. I got to make sure everyone understands because we have two parts of our homework. Homework. Page 286, 289, 4 through 36 even, and number 48, 58, 62. That is the one that will get graded tomorrow. We will check it in class right away. Your other homework, do not forget, Chapter 4 Reflection. I'm giving you Starbucks if you get that done on your data tab. And Chapter 5 Goal is due. That's going to be a completion grade. Every day that you don't do that Chapter 5 goal, I'm going to take points away saying you did not set that goal up. Remember, they're both under data tracking. Chapter 4, here's your reflection, the 4 columns. Chapter 5, all you got to do is tell me what is your goal for this chapter. Whether it's based off grade, homework completion, effort, participation, whatever it is to you. Okay? All right, good luck.